Okay, you ready?
Yeah,
All right,
I'm ready. Good.
I think we got this going. So here we go. Hey, folks, Dave Shimoleski here, Direct Line Media, and welcome back to Behind the Brand, brought to you by Direct Line Media and our famous 60-second video. Again, this is our we're in the midst of coronavirus and lockdowns and social distancing, or whatever you want to call it. There's been different terms thrown around because people don't like social distancing. I'm not a 100% fan of it either, but that's what we're calling it for now. So anyway. We're going to jump right in with our Zoom podcast with Jenny Drescher of the Boulder Group. Yes?
The Boulder Company.
Boulder Company. Damn it. Almost had it. Shoot. So we're going to learn a little bit about it because we've known each other for a little while, and then things change and people move, and we've been out of touch for a little bit, and then we bumped into each other at one of these very cool events over at where your space is. What is the name of that space, please?
So yeah, that's West Hartford Co-working.
West Hartford.
Nissa Tyke started this super cool co-working space in West Hartford, and we were over at West Hartford Center, and then that building changed, and so she set up a whole new space. It used to be a car dealership, and now it's this really terrific co-working space that's all just a small business hub.
That was
So
a
it's
car.
really fun.
Her building was her office was a car dealership.
That office was a car dealership.
Get out! I didn't know that.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the next time you go in there, you're gonna look and you'll be like, oh yeah, I can totally see by the layout, by the way the offices look. And
Yeah, now that you mention it, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, okay, yeah, I could totally see that. That's funny. Yeah. So it's been a while. So why don't you give us and me a lowdown of kind of what you're doing, what you've been up to, what do you
yeah.
focus on? Let's hear about that.
You mean before or after Corona?
Uh, okay. Good point. Good point. Let's do
Yeah.
a little bit before and then what you're doing currently because it's
So,
topical.
yeah, no, that makes total sense, and I think everybody's asking that question now. So it's a perfectly normal question that everyone's thinking about, right? So I the practice that I'm involved in, the work that I do is called applied improvisation. So what that means is that there's improvisation, like comedy for theater, where people make things up on the spot. They come up with plots and characters, and it could be drama, it could be comedy, it could be any number of things to create stories and scenes on the spot. Kind of like Whose Line Is It Anyway? That's improvisation. That's comedy, short form comedy improv.
Yep.
So the
For
skills
sure.
that make that work also work in life, right? Shocking. Right? Because what do they have to do? They have to listen really well. They have to support each other. They have to stay fully present in the moment. They have to be willing to sort of speak and step forward, even if they have no idea what's happening
Mm.
next. Right? It's really sort of a high wire walk. But think about it, we need those skills all day, every day in life, especially now.
Especially now with the stepping forward, not knowing what's going to happen, but you got to go forward, right? That's sort of been my mantra for a long time, but now it's even more important just to get up every day, one foot in front of the other, keep moving forward. You have no idea what's coming next, but you just that's where we are, and it's just I think we've always been that way, but it's just more relevant and more extreme, yeah, right now. So that's cool. Tell us a little bit how if somebody going to come to you and say, "Hey, Jenny, help me out." What sort of how does that all go?
Yeah, how does that work?
Right.
So at the Boulder Company, we do that in a few different ways. So we do that in the format of we take traditional sort of corporate, not corporate topics, but sort of workforce development topics like emotional intelligence or unconscious bias or personality type, like DISC personality type. These are all sort of standard tools that you see in workplace development, organizational development. So we take that and we blend it with the improv to make it really accessible, to make it really fun, so that people are totally engaged. And instead of just being PowerPointed to death, because
Mm,
that's just everyone's idea of hell,
yeah.
right? Like the screen up and then just like there are studies that actually show how much more quickly people tune out
Yeah.
because of PowerPoint, because it's been so overused over the years. So we take the topics and we blend them in with improv to make people just actively learn, so that they're trying, they're engaged all the time. So sometimes that looks like a retreat, sometimes that looks like one-to-one coaching, sometimes that looks like a group. So we're now taking, normally, traditionally, a lot of our work has been in person because it's so much about connectivity and about how we really show up in the moment. Now we're learning how to do it on this virtual platform.
Yeah.
So it's a adventure at the moment, learning how to do it on the virtual platform. My hope is that actually more people will come out of this valuing human connection more, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
that's what it's about. It's all about human connection. Everything that's going to get us through this is all about human connection.
Yeah.
So,
You absolutely, yeah. No, you're absolutely right. How did, what was the light bulb that went off when you said, "Oh, I'm going to do improv to help people connect and move forward in their lives and businesses and things like that"? How did you make that connection?
yeah. Well, a bunch of years ago, I grew up as a theater kid. So I always liked theater and music. I was always involved in that. And then when I got engaged in coaching and facilitation and teaching, I started doing improv, and I said, "Oh my gosh, this is a perfect way to teach people." So the light bulb moment was literally my first improv class. I went into that class, and it was like some dormant part of my brain had been lit back up because I hadn't done theater in years. And I woke up that kid in me that said, "Oh my God, let's go play make believe." And I walked out that very night, and I started just immediately in my head. I was already thinking about, oh, here's what I want to teach through this. Here's how I'm going to convert this content that I already work with in people's worlds. I'm going to start converting it all to something that I can use improv to do. And I just ran with it. That was, oh gosh, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago now.
Yeah.
It's been a while, and I've just been running with it ever since. And then I met my business partner, Ellen Feldman Ornato, and she and I said, "Why aren't we doing this together?" Because she was also in facilitation and training, and she and I had already been friends for a really long time. And she's my best friend. She's my sister from another mother. I'm so lucky. And we said, "Well, we should start doing this together." We went to a conference, and we met a bunch of other people that were doing this kind of work together, and we looked at each other and said, let's go home and start some stuff, man. Let's shake some stuff up. So that's what we did, and then it just took off.
That's awesome.
So,
Yeah, no, that's cool. So, what are some of the like success story? Do you have like a success story that you can share with us? Something somebody came in and they're like at a different level now from because of
yeah.
what you've helped them with?
So one of my favorite success stories, actually, it happened not that long ago. Not the corona, just clearing my throat.
Yeah, we're good.
There's an engineering firm that we started working with a few months ago, and engineers are, they have such a reputation for being cold fish or overly technical or robotic, and there's a certain personality type that's kind of stereotyped into engineering because of the nature of the work.
Sure.
But if you think about it from the engineer's standpoint, a lot of engineers that we've met, so we work a lot in AEC, architecture, engineering, construction, and in manufacturing. Both of those fields are full of highly technical people, architects, engineers, tool makers, people that are really like their technical knowledge makes their career. So everything that they do throughout their job, the emphasis is always on technical skills. But where does that leave them on the people side? It leaves them really, really stressed, because what happens if you've got a senior engineer who is now promoted to a manager because he's really good at making the things that he makes, and then he has to suddenly deal with people or lead or manage, and it can cause a tremendous amount of stress for them because they don't have the leadership skills, they don't have the people skills. So this firm that we started working with in Springfield, I'm certainly happy that I'm happy to name them because they are amazing. OTO Engineering out of Springfield, Massachusetts. They're brilliant. And they were going through a big transition because they were becoming an employee-owned company. The partners were retiring out. And so, but it's a high-quality firm. We've got a great reputation in the marketplace. They said, we want to keep this going. And we need to reform our culture. And some of the people that are inside our ranks, they've never led before. They don't know how to do it. So help us out. And we said, of course, we'll help you out. So we came in and we've been doing a bunch of emotional intelligence work with their engineers. And it's really amazing to see the transformation that's occurring inside this organization, because they're getting to be much better leaders. They're being much braver with each other. Their communications have opened up. Places where there were a lot of hard edges and conflict inside their relationships because of the transition, those pointy edges are softening.
Cool.
And what's coming out of that is their relationships are more genuine. They're more, I hate to use the overword authentic, but that's really what it is. They're being more genuine with each other. There are people coming out of the woodwork that are saying, I want to lead too, which wasn't happening during the transition, because that's normal. Transition is really hard, right? People don't necessarily step forward when the ground is uncertain, a la the giant situation we're in. But
Sure.
if you look at the level of that, at the level of just this one company, they were sort of slowly putting one foot in front of the other and didn't necessarily have the skills for it. They didn't necessarily know, well, what does this look like for us now? So I consider them to be one of my favorite wins, because helping engineers to be more at ease as humans and more comfortable with emotions and more comfortable with the people side is, I mean, I I love it. I couldn't do that. I could do that work all day. I could just work with engineers all day, because they benefit and they learn so well. Like they're learning people. Not that everybody else isn't, but there's a certain kind of learning appetite, I think, that comes along with certain careers in engineering.
I think in engineering in itself, it's like you got to want to learn, right? Because right. I mean, that's just like that's what they do. It's almost like an art form. It's like it's so. I mean, don't even ask me. I don't know. I did this video a long time ago for a fraternity that's an engineer type fraternity. I forget the college. But crazy smart people, really nice, really intelligent, very imaginative, and
Thank you. Yes.
very cool. I mean, I mean, they're super. I mean, you have to be that kind of line of work, right? I would think, being an engineer, you got to sort of think outside the box a little bit and bring together stuff that normally wouldn't be together and make it work. It's fascinating what these guys can do. So for you to go in there and sort of bring that out of them and take that skill they have and use it, in communicating with other people, because that's really, I guess, what you're doing, right? They already have it. They just need to reformulate it to make it work with people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they have the baseline skills, but a lot of times when you talk about emotional, like we do a lot of work in emotional intelligence, which is very much about how you manage your own emotions, how you recognize or label your own emotions, which is a skill a lot of people lack in any career. We don't get taught emotional language. Growing up, most of us don't. I mean, I think probably the majority of people I meet don't learn the vernacular of emotion, right? So what happens? They go through life, they don't necessarily know how to name their feelings when they're coming up. They sort of may have broad buckets like mad, sad, glad. But if you can name, I'm feeling anxiety versus I'm feeling anger. If you can name these things discreetly, there's a lot of power in that, right? Because then it's not just this thing that's overwhelming you or attacking you. It can be something that you can actually recognize and say, yep, that's what I'm feeling right now. And I can recognize that emotions are fleeting, that this emotion will pass, right? So
but people know that, right? They're like, oh, I mean, are you teaching them to feel these? Because we know the terminology. We kind of been taught like what fear is. We've been taught I don't know if we've been taught really what anxiety is. I think that's still something that people don't quite grasp very well. But, with sadness and anger, the simple ones, happiness, right? So we kind of know what that is. So what do you do specifically to really enlighten somebody saying like, no, that's fear that you're feeling,
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
So a lot of the conversations involve, so like if we're teaching somebody so here's an example. Very often when people are acting out and maybe they're feeling angry or they're feeling frustrated, what's underneath anger and frustration the vast majority of the time is fear, right? So part of the conversation very often with people is, so I hear you saying that you're frustrated that that Bill didn't bring you the report on time. Yes, that's what I'm saying. I'm frustrated that Bill didn't bring me the report on time. Okay, what is it that you're afraid of? That usually stops people in their tracks, because they're not used to connecting the dots between I feel frustrated or I feel angry or I'm mad and what it is that they're actually afraid of, what's driving that bus underneath. So when you stop and you ask somebody, not what are you mad about, but what are you afraid of, it creates a totally different dynamic in the conversation, because then people have to stop and say, okay, well, I'm afraid that Bill's report not being on my desk on time is going to make me look bad as his supervisor. Oh, that's really what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid that I look bad.
Interesting.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what would that mean for you if you had, if somebody questioned your ability as a leader? Well, that could mean that I am viewed as incompetent by my superiors. Okay, what would that mean for you? Well, that could mean that my job would be in jeopardy. Okay, what would that mean for you? Well, that could be that that puts my livelihood in jeopardy. Oh, well, what would that be? Well, so you just keep
It goes
digging and
on and
digging.
on. Yeah.
There's a methodology to just going, okay, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? Like just digging deeper. What does that mean for you? What's that about for you? And just digging and digging and digging and digging. Tim Ferriss actually has a name for it. He named it about 10 years ago. I've been doing it for years, and I learned it from a coach, but Tim Ferriss named it one day on his podcast. He called it fear setting, where you just keep following this line of thought of what it is that I'm afraid of, because what eventually happens is we get to the bottom of, say, this kind of conversation. Oh, well, I'm afraid that my livelihood is in danger, which means I'm going to lose my job, I'm going to lose my wife, I'm going to lose my kids, I'll end up on the street homeless, right? Like if you take it to its extreme, and then I'm going to die, right? So if you follow it to its extreme, it's really, it gives us perspective on what it is that we're afraid of, right? Because
How does Bob or Bill or whatever your character's name was, how does he overcome that fear and understand, like, are you helping him be less frustrated? Like, how would he overcome that? Because you have all these things. Well, he's not going to get on time, and then I'm going to look incompetent. I could get fired. I could lose my job. I could lose my income. I could lose my house, and on and on and on and on and on it goes, right? So, yeah.
So what happens is that as people name those things, when they finally get to the bottom of that barrel, all of the not all, but a significant portion of the emotional charge has actually gone out of their state of their current state. Because what he may have walked into the room with was, I'm pissed off at Bill for not giving me the report on time. Right? But what we got at through digging, just that simple conversation, what does that matter to you? Or what does that mean for you? We got down to what was actual for him. So as soon as he was able to name that, he's able to say, well, wait a minute, that really is like a whole lot of stuff that my imagination is producing, right? Because if you think about the starting point of, I'm mad at Bill because he didn't give me the report on time, that's a lot of space between the report's late and I'm going to die.
It is. Right? It's huge. It's huge. And it's like your imagination. I mean, God, my imagination runs wild, sometimes with the things, and it's probably everybody. And so I guess it kind of, well, it puts everything in perspective then. Really, essentially, to wrap it up in a nutshell, right? It just would put everything in perspective. Like,
yeah.
It's not really Bill's problem. Like, he'll get it to you. You just need to kind of step back and really put things in perspective. Like, oh, now I'll get it, and it'll be fine, and we'll all just move on in the world. Like, essentially, right? Just calm down.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, just calm down. But no, you're exactly right. I mean, perspective is the exact right word. The exact right word, David. It's completely the right word. And this is actually, so if you think about the way this impacts our relationships, if I don't have a grip on what it is that I'm feeling or why I'm feeling it, then I might do something. So we look at different categories of how we respond to emotions. We look at how we do it ourselves. We look at how that affects our interactions. So like, how does that affect my interactions with Bill if I'm not self-aware? Well, I'm going to blame Bill. I'm going to turn around and point the finger at Bill and be mad at Bill, which is going to erode our trust. So if I'm his leader, then I'm eroding trust with him by putting that on him in a way that's angry or not kind or productive. So it erodes trust, it erodes communication, and then if you follow that line of thought, it also is going to interfere with our ability to solve problems together. It's going to interfere with our ability to make decisions together. If we're working side by side, or there's if you're the boss, or if you're the direct reporter, if you're managing somebody up. I mean, it's true in any relationship, right? Because it's true in your home right now. I can guarantee you that across the country or across the globe right now, there are people who are feeling tremendous anxiety, but they're not labeling it for what it is. And they're taking it out on their families that they're now, sort of cooped up in their homes with. But if people can just name and follow that anxiety and talk things out a little bit, it can make the world of difference, because then they're reckoning with what is actual, as opposed to just saying, well, I was just really mad at whoever for doing whatever. Right? That's part of why emotional intelligence skills are so important. So they have a lot to do with how we manage stress, how we make decisions, because emotions are a system. They're with us all the time. Like, we're not robots.
So it's okay.
Right?
I mean, in a sense, people say, well, don't get mad, and don't be sad, and don't be anxious, and don't be scared. I think it'd be more of, that's fine to be sad or mad or scared or what have you, but just really pinpoint it. Where's it coming from? What's the underlying? Where's that going to lead to? Is it really in context? Is it important? I mean, is that something you really need to be scared about, or are you just thinking way too far down the road it's unrealistic? I mean, I think that's what it comes down to. I mean, it's, because I don't think you really want to, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, crush your emotions, like push them down. I think that'll cause more harm. I think you're right. I think we need to, I'm mad, why am I? I'm scared, why am I? And then go from there. I think that'll be a world of difference for everybody right now. I mean, especially right now, you gotta kind of sit back and think, all right, why am I feeling this way down the road? Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, crushing emotions or denying emotions.
Denying
so
emotions.
Does not work.
Yeah, definitely doesn't work, because it'll catch up with you eventually, and it's probably it's gonna.
Body,
yeah.
Right? It goes into your body. Like, why do I have my stomach ache? Well, did you say that you were mad? No.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think maybe worse yet is if you stifle all those emotions. I mean, it's going to come to the surface eventually. Yes. In probably a bad way, and you're going to be at the wrong place. It's just bad all around. So yeah, I guess the point is, let your emotions be what they are, but understand what they are, and really think about it. That's very cool.
Yep.
The Boulder company.
The Boulder Company.
Okay, I don't know why I want to say group for some reason. Anyway, the Boulder Company.
It happens all the time. People like saying the Boulder Group. Like, we get that a lot. I'm starting to think we should have like a secondary name, the Boulder Company, aka the Boulder Group,
aka the Boulder Group,
the Boulder People, because that happens too.
Oh, the Boulder People happens too. That's funny. What? Because that's interesting. Because Boulder, right? You think of Colorado. Obviously, I don't know why. So you got to tell me why the Boulder Company here in Connecticut. Yeah, what's the name all about?
So it's Boulder, Bolder, as in be a bolder version of yourself. So what we discovered along our journey of being in business for the last several years is that the main result we were creating for people was that we helped them become a bolder version of who they already were. So we work in basically 4 key areas that most of us need help in on some level. That's listening, right? We never really master listening. We just continually have a practice of getting better at it. Right. Speaking up, which is speaking up is not necessarily what it appears on the surface. So like sometimes if I say speaking up to people, they're like, oh, well, I'm good at that. I say what's on my mind. But it's not always about just saying what's on your mind when it's in the moment. For somebody who's less inclined to speak up, it can be as simple as, I need to speak up and assert myself in certain situations. But for a person who maybe has a bigger personality, sometimes speaking up is being more mindful of when and how they say what's there, as opposed to just opening their mouth and sort of, vomiting all over the room. Right? Because we all have people like that. Right? Yeah. That person who doesn't have a sense of when it's appropriate to say things, because if you think about this in the emotional intelligence context, somebody who is really like big brash personality or thinks they're all that in a bag of chips, they may be great at speaking up and stating their opinion and being like rah, 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 this sort of alpha dog behaviors, but they may not be as able to speak up and say something like, I'm concerned, and this is making me hesitant about what we need to move forward with on this project. That alpha dog personality may not speak up in that way. They may not speak up in the softer way that sometimes the situation calls for. They may not want to be that vulnerable with other people if they're so busy being the alpha dog. So speaking up looks different for every single person.
So the alpha dog would be the boss of a division or a company or something like that, and it's important for them to. Is that when you that would be? Is that a good example, or could it just be a worker?
It's more about personality than status. Like, it's
Okay.
more about personality than it is about style. So like what we see in construction a lot is that the alpha dog can be like that tough guy that's out there swinging the hammer. And he could have a total alpha dog personality, which is not unusual in construction. But what is that guy not speaking up about? Well, if he's the alpha dog kind of personality where he's a tough guy, he's not speaking up and saying things like, ow, that comment you made really bothered me, really hurt my feelings. Right? That's a form of speaking up that he's probably not doing. You know, like if I'm just making up a random example, but if his coworker said something that really bothered him, he might not speak up about it because he has his role or his self-perception is about, I'm the alpha dog, I don't get hurt, I don't say anything. So what does that do? It forces him to not speak up.
Right.
And so that's true for him.
How would that, because, yeah, I totally see that. That's just stereotypical, right? Yeah, rolls right off, right? So
Yeah,
down,
thanks,
down,
Bob.
down the road, how is that gonna, what's damaging about that going down the road, whether it be months or
So
years?
if you think about, so what happens if if you are a direct report with that guy? If you are, particularly now where there are more women entering the field, um, if you are a direct report of that guy and his response to anything uncomfortable is to shut down and play the alpha dog, what's he modeling for you as a leader? Are you then feeling like, oh, it's okay for me to speak up when things aren't working, or it's okay for me to express my feelings or concerns about the project? Probably not. If you're that guy's direct report, you probably are not feeling like it's okay for you to speak up. And so much of leadership and team dynamics is about what you're showing other people is okay or not okay. And then,
Leading by example, then. I mean, really. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
leading by,
Do you find, I know the answer to this question, I think, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you find there's more alpha dog men as opposed to alpha dog women?
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Especially in those fields.
does it exist in women? And if it does, is it the same kind of thing, or is it sort of manifest differently in women? And how you know what I mean? Do you understand that
Right.
question?
Yeah, I think it does show. I think it does show up in women. I think it shows up a little differently in women. I mean, there's a side of that is very much about the way that people respond to strong women is not always good, right? So very often, so you can be the alpha dog and not have somebody call you a bitch, right? But if you're a strong woman and you sort of show up as the alpha in some of those same ways, that you're much more likely to have somebody give you pushback about it because folks in general are not used to seeing women show up that way. Most of the women that I know that are really, really powerful have learned how to adapt to just be leaders and strong leaders and be present for others in ways that don't look like an alpha dog style, because the alpha dog style is um, sort of very distinctly male. So the way that women express that kind of more dominant. I mean, and I get this because I'm a dominant personality, so I can use myself as an example. But there have been times when I've been very direct and very commanding, and it's totally blown back in my face. And it's not something I've done on purpose. It's just like I have a strong personality, and I get that about myself. So I've had to notice, oh, okay, wait a minute. Am I being commanding right now? Am I being overly directive? Or am I domineering the situation without meaning to? And I say, okay, that's a real alpha behavior that's not going to help anybody. It doesn't help me. It doesn't help the people I'm trying to support. It doesn't help my direct reports. So I have to say, okay, dial that back, Drescher,
Mm-hmm.
and stop and think about what is a better way to influence people. What's a better way to get things done through others? You know, oh, the better way is to back down from that kind of dominant behavior and be more authentic and be more feeling and be more honest and transparent, because that's how we get stuff done through other people. is through that level of willingness to be vulnerable.
Is it the same thing for men then, if they're being dominant or powerful, I guess, in a conversation, and it is the same kind of thing, like, oh, that, that's too much, maybe dial it back a little bit. I mean,
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the areas that we help alpha men not be quite so big dog barky.
Do
Is
do women I'm guessing
correct.
women come up against that a little bit more though, as far as getting that pushback, I would think, because men, it's men in charge or men, the leaders are, I guess, going off stereotypes, right? They're supposed to be that way, whereas women, maybe, historically, it's becoming more and more women are in charge, but they're going to get more pushback, and I think it's getting less and less because there's more and more women in charge, and which is, I think, wonderful. I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm just trying to make some observations.
No, you're
Yeah,
just noticing the
yeah,
distinctions. Yeah, I think that's true. I think that it's a transition for both men and women, right? Because we're increasingly getting used to women being in more positions of authority and leadership, and women are giving themselves permission more and more to learn how to lead on their own terms, as opposed to sort of what the traditional 20th century model left us with,
but
right?
but
So
but continue to be a woman, right? Don't step into a man's role, right? Typical, and play that man role. No, I mean, you're going to be in a leadership role, but you're still a woman. You're going to be who you are. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, I think.
and I think that's equally true for men, because
Sure.
what I've seen. So you asked before about how does it affect, what are some of the negative effects? So some of the other negative effects that come with that kind of alpha dog behavior is that actually there's a mountain of research that shows all the negative physical effects of being that sort of alpha raptu type person who thinks they have to be in that kind of leadership behavior. And it causes hypertension, digestive problems, weight gain. Like if you look around the construction or manufacturing industries, or actually IT is another place where you see this, weirdly enough, what do you see? You see a lot of overweight people,
Yeah.
right? A lot of that is their bodies holding in that stress, right? Because they're not managing the emotions, and they feel like they have to show up as this alpha to manage the environment. I mean, construction is a really hard environment on so many levels. Everything changes every 5 minutes in some cases. I mean, it's a super tough industry. So one of the things that goes on is that it does show up in the body, and so that's not healthy for the individual, right? And so the changing of the stereotypes and moving away from all of these stereotypes that I think of them as 20th century legacies that we're all trying to work out now, right? We're slowly learning how to leave those things in the past, and it's going to take a long time, because change is like a micro move forward and then 10 micro moves back.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Except in this situation could change a lot very quickly.
Well, maybe it's because it's like the urgency of it, right? Like, oh, yeah, we'll get there when we get there. But this is like, well, there is no other option really. And I think people they have to adapt. There's no other choice.
Yeah.
Even the people that don't want to adapt,
you like it or not.
yeah. You're I mean, look at this. This is I've adapted. I've had to. I'd love to have you come into my office and sit here and face to face, but that's just not going to happen, because we'd be, like 3 feet apart, and that's against the law right now, or what have you, against the rules, I should say. Yeah. But
yeah. Well, we're all trying to be responsible citizens, right?
I think we're all trying to be responsible citizens. Yeah. And I think that's important. That's what it comes down to. Yeah. And, because nobody wants these constraining laws and things put on them. But if we just say, okay, I'm going to be a responsible citizen and not be that alpha, right?
Yeah, not saying, oh, this is wrong, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, that's funny.
So I mean, it's good. We're very lucky to be able to do this kind of work. Plus, I mean, when you blend the emotional intelligence stuff with the improv stuff, what it does is it helps people to give. Like, it's so funny. I love watching tough guys soften in the train must be going by, huh?
Oh, you can hear that? Yeah, so, the train's not too far from here. You hear everything. It's actually, if the building wasn't so shut down, there's obviously a lot of people that just aren't here. I think, I'm in my office. I'm here by myself, and then there's another office 2 doors down. There's only 2 of them in there, but everything else is closed except for the brewery. They're doing takeout window service at the brewery, New Park Brewing, so they're doing takeout windows. So they're kind of doing some work, but normally you'd hear people talking and laughing and construction, and I mean it'd be noisy, but it's quiet except for the train. So, but it's good, and sirens. I hear a lot of sirens, fire trucks and whatnot. But anyway, but it's good. It's cool to be here. Where were
So what I was going to say before was it's great to watch tough guys soften. So like that would be the note. That's the other note that I would put on the whole conversation about men versus women and emotions and alpha and how do we lead. And I think I think men have suffered as much through the tough guy model as anybody, right? There's a lot of sort of public conversation about, oh well, this is all about women and it's so difficult and yada yada yada. And it's like, well, it's hard on men too. So one of our facilitators, his name is Jim Young, who lives up in Northampton, Massachusetts. He has a whole great curriculum around men having permission to be gentle men, not gentlemen, but gentle men. Like if that's your natural state of being, like I would think I think of you that way. Like you're relaxed. You're a gentle person. You're not an alpha dog personality at all. So.
Have you talked to my wife about?
But but men have not been given that deck of cards for how to manage emotions. In many cases, I think that's a place where men have been shortchanged as well. So it doesn't work for anybody. It doesn't work for. If there's a lack of a toolkit, then that's bad all around. So. We're out to give the toolkits of managing emotion and understanding to places where it really can make a big difference, like these tough kind of environments.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I think, teaching people how to recognize their emotions, what they are, how to, I guess, deal with them, lack of a better term, put everything in perspective, and I like your thing about speaking up too. It's not just speak up to vomit all over everything. It's, to make a point. And it doesn't have to be really in the moment of a conversation. It could be a thoughtful presentation a day or two later, get your thoughts together. I think that's important. I think, well, just because you can't put your thoughts together now, don't let that freak you out because, I'm the type of person, sometimes I don't, in certain conversations, not all the thoughts come together as they should. So I need a little bit of time to process. But then after you process, okay, you put all the pieces together, then you can speak up then. It's not too late. You can still put in your 2 cents, I think. I think that's important for people. It's like, well, you don't have to answer right away. If you need a second to think about it, say, yeah, you know what? There's a lot of information. Let me step back for a minute. Let me put it together, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I think that's really important. I think there's a lot of pressure to answer now, answer right away. In the moment, but not everybody can do that. There's some people that can, and there's some people that can't.
Right, and so much of it is situational. So, like when you were talking just now, what popped into my head was, yes, that's true. And what I like about that also is sort of the nuance of being able to say, it's okay for me now in this situation to speak up, or I'm recognizing my own emotional state, and maybe I need to walk away from this to get perspective and come back in with a better sense of what's present. What is the challenge? What is the upside? What is the downside? To be able to stop and think. I mean, that's an actual measurable skill in EQ. It's called impulse control, right? So, and then what I love also about what you just said is you pointed directly, inadvertently, to the 2 other areas that we work in the most. So listening, speaking up, taking ownership, cultivating ownership, and building relationships. So when you do that example that you just gave, where you say, okay, I need to stop and think, you're actually cultivating ownership of your own response, right? Yeah. You're walking away and saying, I'm going to put myself in a position where I have agency, I have authority over how I'm going to respond to this, which is totally different than just reacting.
Sure.
Right? Because you could react to it by saying, oh, that's it, I'm putting my hands in the air and I'm walking away, right? So you could shut down. Or you could lose your cool and have, a temper tantrum, which is also a way of backing down and not taking ownership. I mean, there's a million and one ways that people react.
Sure.
But you cultivate ownership if you say, okay, you know what, I'm going to dial back, I'm going to walk away, I'm going to go get my head and kind of heart around what's going on. And then I'm going to come back. And what you're actually doing inside of that is you're doing the building relationship part. So you're cultivating that trust between you and the other person. So you're doing all of those things. You're doing all four of those things. You're listening, you're speaking up, you're cultivating ownership, and you're building relationships inside just that one simple example that you gave.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's important because, I mean, doing this podcast has been interesting to, and I love doing these things. This is the 9th one, but it's, I've done a ton of interviews in the line of work that I do, but they're a little bit shorter. They're directed. They're a little bit less conversational because I have certain questions that I need to get through and ask because I'm trying to build some sort of a story for this customer, this client. And this is a little bit different. This is like, well, because I don't do notes. I don't do notes here. I can't. It takes away from what I'm trying to accomplish, and that is just be able to talk to people as a conversation and less as a interview. So there's a lot of times where I have to, hey, I can't answer that, or I don't know. Just, you got to give me some time, and I just got to do that. And I learned that a while ago. Somebody, actually when I was in college, he told me, and he says, you don't have to answer right away. You just, sometimes you can, it's okay to, tell somebody, like, I need to think about it. That's okay. And it's huge for a lot of people once that dawns on them. Oh my God, that's it's like a life changer, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, the pressure to respond in the moment is pretty significant. I mean, I really sort of hope, and again, it brings me back to this whole, physical isolating, quarantining thing that we're doing, is that pressure to respond in this whole, it reminds me of this whole everything needs to be done in the culture that we live in here in the Northeast. And I sincerely hope that the process of everybody having to shut down and go home slows people down. That it slows things down, because it's so not a healthy pace of life that we are living here in the Northeast corridor from DC to Boston.
Insanity.
It's the most paced part of the country. It's not healthy. It takes people out of the moment. It hurts the spirit and the body. I mean, I know that sounds really flaky, but I mean, if you think about the fact that just the simple act of, you've seen so many people posting on social media about being with their families making dinner. Just that one simple thing, right? Or actually slowing down and going for a walk in the mid-afternoon so that they're not in the house, just to get out and get some air. Those are all forms of slowing down. Those are nourishing to the spirit, right? And they're slowing down, as opposed to, we're so used to running from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. And it's called the rat race for a reason. And where does it get us?
Going to social media and slowing down, there's that, in talking about pressure to react and respond. What's your thoughts on reacting and responding on certain posts on social media? In a number of different things. So there could be one scenario, somebody posts something. Okay, there's a few, right? So we'll do this one. So somebody posts something, and it's an important thing, and everybody's reacting. Do you need to react to everything on social media? And the other thing is, that's the reaction part, but you mentioned cooking dinner and posting that on social media. Oh, that person posted, I'm making dinner. I need to show what I'm doing in my family too, to keep up with the Joneses. Is that going to be growing now that we're all quarantined? Or you think people are going to be like, you know what, maybe I can put my phone down and take a break? I don't know. I'm just...
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting question. So my friend Lena had posted something lovely, which was a picture of her. She's separated from her sister, and normally they get together a couple times a week. So she posted a photo of them both making dinner in their own homes, being on, some sort of video service. So it's their way of being together, doing their thing that's
cool.
Normal.
Yeah.
Right. So she posted it as a way of saying, hey, this is how we're trying to maintain connection, normalcy. And, and then she asked the question, what are you doing to try and maintain some kind of normalcy, with people that with people that you normally connect with, the regularities of things that you may not be able to access right now. So my take on that is that she did that as a way both of making an offer, a suggestion to people to say, hey, what about you? What are you up to? Right? Which is in service to, I think, anybody reading that on social media might say, oh, well, that's a good question. What am I doing? Oh, what's available to me there? And I think that's really different than sort of some of these self-serving posts where they're just not interesting and they're not asking a smart question. I think posts should be either I don't know. I'm a fan of having a post be something that's of service to others.
Sure.
Right? Like that's my general rule of thumb. And it's not to say that we don't all sometimes have some post that's just completely self-serving. But maybe there's the question of how often does that occur?
Yeah.
Right? And I think the other piece of that right now is for people who may be feeling really isolated, a lot of posting and responding to other people's posts is part of how they're feeling more connected. I mean, if you're super extroverted, I mean, I'm pretty extroverted, so I've been on social media a lot more lately. I have barely been on social media for the last 2 years, but I'm finding myself on it a lot more now because all the people that I normally would see in person, I'm not seeing them in person.
Oh, that's interesting. So that's a good point. So you've used it in the past before this virus, but not as much as you are now because you were out and about, you're actually meeting people, but now that you can't, so it just becomes a tool to meet people, which is always what it's been about. But now it's being more so of a tool, just like this is Zoom thing, right? Now it's people understanding oh, that's a really good tool. Like it's just a tool. It's not this freaky fad, thing. It's no, it's actual tool to connect with people if you can't see them face to face. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yes. I like the idea though. I like the question you're asking around this whole piece of when does somebody put the phone down and just be present, right? Because that's always the question that we're out for is are we being present for the people around us? And maybe the opportunity, maybe there's another layer inside this quarantine process for people to be more present and know when to put the phone down. Right? I mean, that's a definite opportunity that you're highlighting inside of this situation. It's okay, great. I did my share for the day. I connected with people. Now I'm gonna put my phone down. I'm gonna double down on being present for the people that are right in front of me in my home.
Yeah. No,
right?
because you said the rat race in New England, which is, I mean, it's just every day it seems like people are going faster and faster and more, and if you're not working at 11 o'clock at night, there's a problem. You know what I mean? So, and I think, so what happens when people go to work, let's say there's a couple, people go to work and then they do their work at work and then they come home and then there's more work to do. So they're not connecting because they're always thinking about tomorrow and the next day and the next big job and the next big client and the next big whatever it is. And now since that's sort of being wrapped up in certain circumstances, canceled in other circumstances, not happening for a little while, well, what am I looking at? There's nothing to look at anymore. All right, it's time to shut that off. I need it. Okay, well, you're sitting right in front of me. Why don't we have a conversation? Right?
What a radical concept!
Yeah, right? It's funny. But that's true because people, they work all day and they go home and they work at night. And I do the same thing. I like to think that I try to take a big chunk of time off somewhere in the middle of the day that I can be present with my family or whatever. And then when I have time later in the evening, I can catch up on a couple of things. But I think it's hard, especially for business owners, to just go to work 9 to 5. Honestly, that's not realistic. I mean, obviously, that's never been realistic in any world if you're on your business. But
what's funny, I actually really hope that's so funny to hear you say that because I was thinking about that just yesterday. Is what if one of the good things that could come of this is that people become and companies become more willing to just pitch 9 to 5 as something that is arbitrarily it's arbitrary and it's not effective, right? Because much of how we work is about our own personal abilities and style. Like, I could do, like, if you compare two coworkers, and they're randomly shoved into, this is the 9 to 5 model, right? Like one person could be getting through a lot of work in that 8 hours according to the structure that's provided, but the other person might need, 16 hours, not 16 because that would be double, but like that other person might need, yeah, that would be an
Yeah.
employer problem.
Yeah.
But like the other person might need a different workflow to make
Sure.
that same bucket of tasks occur, right? Especially if you take into account the fact that there's an interruption so often in emails, or somebody walks by your desk, or in the case of right now, people are struggling. A lot of people that we're talking to are struggling with, how do I work at home? Because that's not the norm for many people. That is so not their norm, right? They're not used to zooming from their home office, from their bedroom, from their wherever they're zooming from. It's totally outside their wheelhouse.
Yeah.
So what takes me 2 hours might take you 2 hours, but the quality of the work is going to be completely different based on our own personal style or our ability to focus. The 9 to 5 model leaves everybody wanting because it assumes that everybody's abilities and style are the same, and that's just not true.
I think well, that all starts in the education, in the school model, where it's so rigid. Talking about the public school system, where it's so rigid that this is, you go and you learn and you test and you learn and you test, or memorize and you test, and that's just carried over into 9 to 5. I think everybody learns different and they all do things differently, and it's as long as we're getting good results, why can't I work from 6 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon, or whatever the hours may be, or I don't know the example, but that kind of thing. You're right, because sometimes 9 to 5 is it eats people up sometimes if they have to do that, where they could function really well and do an A plus job if maybe they could shift their hours a little bit. And we're living in an age, and we learned over this past week that we can get a lot done just whenever we want, from wherever we want. I mean, we have this amazing technology that's I think we've just decided now, like, it's really been underutilized all this time.
Yeah, it probably has.
Yeah.
It has.
I'm thinking of, I was talking to somebody, and his kids are out of school, obviously, and they're all like, well, they all use their school issued Chromebooks, and they're doing their work from home. I'm like, why isn't that really the norm for every school system in America, to be issued some sort of a tablet or a laptop computer? It's so important now to be able to learn and function and do things as we're learning now on a computer, because you never know where you're going to be, that you need to adapt and reach out to people on some sort of a device, because you can't be there in person and learn and just get accustomed to it. I think it's important that, this was a while ago, I was in this school, this was years ago, and they already, all the kids were issued a tablet. I forget, it was like 8th grade or something, I remember. And they were issued, and they carried that all the way through until they graduated. It eliminates the need for large books and other different types of learning material that you can just, and it's, the materials. So in other words, my editing software that I use, it's updated. It's just updated. I always have the latest version, because it's what I subscribe to. But if you're handed a history book that was printed, I don't know what the turnaround time is now, right? But you get my point. You could be looking at a history book 5 years ago, 10 years ago, instead of getting current information through the internet. I don't know. I'm not coming down to the education system. I just think that maybe it's time to kind of think about what's going on and look at these kids differently, and help them learn a different way. That's all. Yeah, that's kind of what
I think that, I really like your point, because part of what this whole situation is shining a light on is equity challenges, because not every school system has had the money, or if you think about any school system in a poor town in rural America, or any school system in an urban environment, they're playing the same game, right? Poverty.
Yeah.
So not every school system has the bandwidth to do that. So when the call came out for, let's make all the learning virtual, the pushback to that was, okay, great. you're assuming that every home has internet access.
And they don't.
Assuming that everybody has access to a computer, and the answer to both of those questions is no.
Yeah.
So the idea of giving a device that is, so providing that device, like you said, is a way to cut across that equity problem, right? And not have it be something that is an accessibility challenge, right? What if you did have a kid that couldn't have internet at home and didn't have a device? Well, guess what? You just gave him one. So maybe that opens up a lot more opportunity for that kid to learn.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Some of what goes on has been equity issues, and this whole situation is shining a big fat light on that.
Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely right. And that is a problem, making sure everybody gets these devices and money and budget and equity and all that kind of stuff you said. But I think if we really think hard about it, there's, it's just a matter of where your priorities lie, really. I mean, the government just gave out a crap ton of money, so right? Are they going to?
So, are you applying for your small business loan?
That's, I don't know. That's a really interesting thing here. And I had a conversation with Kristen and some other folks, Kristen Gorski from West Hartford, and the economic development. I don't remember her exact title, but something like that. Anyway, and it's for these companies that, one, there's a couple of things. One, they could already have debt because maybe they just got a new office or a new building, or in my case, new equipment and things like that. And so you have this debt, and then you pile on more debt. Even if it is interest free, it's still debt that you have to pay back. And so people are saying, well, just apply. You don't always have to take it. I don't know. I'm really on the fence. I don't know if that's something I really want to do, is take on more debt in the hopes that all of a sudden business is going to pick up a month from now. I can write those checks and pay that debt off. I don't know if that's going to, So it's an interesting time. I mean, it's very gracious, and it's great for the state to try to figure out ways to help us all small businesses out. But and for everybody, it's going to be different. Everybody's going to be different. They're going to say like, "Yep, no, that's going to be great. That's perfect," because I can see what's going to happen. But other people, maybe not so much. So I don't know what the answer is.
I think you're right. It's completely individual. Like for our purposes, so much of the work that we have lined up for the months of March and April, we had a lot of work lined up. We had a lot of work in the pipeline, and all of it canceled.
Yeah, it's rough.
Because of what we do, so much of what we have done historically has been in person.
Yeah,
that's changing now. We're going virtual.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, we had, and this is true of a lot of my colleagues, is that everybody is just, okay, wow, look, there goes 2 months of gigs canceled.
Yeah.
Out.
Yeah.
And that's across the board. I mean, the folks that I feel really bad for are restaurants and musicians. Because independent musicians, I mean, people sort of think about music and they think about, stadiums, artists, the big names, but the majority of independent musicians out there, the way that they stay in business and avoid having to go work for the man, so to speak, go work a regular job, is they do it by touring.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, independent musicians, small bands, they go to small venues and they tour and tour and tour and tour and tour, and that's how they make their wages. Because if you think about the way that technology has completely changed the music industry, right? Like when you and I were growing up, we had 8-tracks and cassettes and vinyl.
Do you remember when Napster? Remember when Napster came out? Oh my God, that was.
Whoa!
Oh my God, crazy. But yeah, it was. You'd go to the record store, and the record companies and the bands made money on, how many records were sold, and that's just not. They don't make any money. That's just gone. That's just gone. And it was like in a heartbeat too. But that dried up quick.
Really quick, yeah. So it's super important to, like, every time I go to a concert, because I go to a lot of live music. Every time I go to a concert, I buy something from them.
Yeah, that's important.
Just to support them, and like even if it's something like ridiculous, I should have brought it out. I have a little device over, a box over there that's got a. There's a band I love called Gaelic Storm. They're Irish music, but they're also kind of like Celtic rock. They're a lot of fun and they're hilarious.
Nice.
They have a little foam donkey, like a toy foam donkey, the same size as this.
Yeah.
and it's just like a squishy stress ball, but it's a donkey. It's hilarious.
That's
And it's
awesome.
got their logo on the side of it.
Yeah, I
So
saw, it's
just
a
find
lot.
things. So
People are coming up with a lot of different ways to kind of say, help support me because it's like you got to okay, business is different. It's different now for sure, and I think it's going to be different going forward. So it's take a deep breath, kind of regroup a little bit and just kind of think about this and recognize, okay, like we talked about at the beginning of this conversation, you're scared shitless, right? But right? Why? Why are you, right? So let's think about it. Let's take a deep breath and regroup a little bit and just kind of keep moving forward. There's a barber shop in town that I just started going to. First State Barbers. I don't know. They're in the building there right now in Farmington Ave. A horrible plug I'm giving these guys because I can't remember anything about it. Sorry. But anyway, they do a really nice job, and he says he posted something. The owner, he says, "Listen, hey, we're done. We're not cutting hair, and that's all we do. So if you want it, we have some. They've always had merchandise like T-shirts and stuff, but it's just he made a link available online. It's like, hey, just if you want to support us, we can't cut your hair, but if you could buy a shirt or something like that, that'd be cool. So it's that kind of stuff. Shirts like $22 or something for a T-shirt. I mean, that's not bad. I mean, that's what they go for. So. So it's those kind of things, like doing different things to kind of just get through a little bit, being creative, thinking a little bit. So,
yeah,
yeah,
about all the places and ways that we as small business people can support each other.
yeah,
Right? Like every time I'm buying something, and not that I'm doing a ton of shopping right now, but I'm like every time I do that, I'm going and I'm posting it. Because that's like we were talking about social media before. That's one of the ways that I'm trying to be of service right now is to buy something. Like when I need something, I'm not just automatically ordering it off of Amazon. I'm going, okay, who's still open locally that I can buy something from? And I did this with it. Go to my Facebook, you'll see it. Like I bought a pizza from Pizzeria Marzano here in Torrington, Connecticut, who started delivering. So I ordered from them and I posted a picture and I posted, hey, look, this restaurant's delivering. Help
awesome,
them buy from them. If you can spare a dime, buy from them. And then I actually, I try to use the right hashtags like support small business and keep the lights on. Hashtag keep the lights on is another one that I think is pretty cool, right? Because that's what it's all about, is like helping small business keep the lights on.
yeah. I think it's important
So
because small business is so important, not only in our state, but in every state across the country. I mean, we're hugely important to the economy. So yeah, do what you can, folks. What else we want to talk about? I want to, because this is called Behind the Brand. I mean, we got a little off track here, but that's to be expected considering of where we are. What's your tagline for the Boulder company? Do you have any kind of tagline? And if you do, how did you kind of come up with that?
yeah, we've had a couple of different ones. It's like every other company, right? Everybody's tagline, and then they're like, no, I don't like that. So for a little while, we were using powering the people side of your success because of the fact that we work with so many companies that are technical and they need to work on that people side. We were using that for a while. It didn't necessarily resonate well, so we kind of moved from that. And right now, we've got a tagline that we're much happier with, which is step up, speak up, stay up. Right? Because that's what we do. If we're taking you as an individual or a team member or an organization to become the Boulder version, the best Boulder version of yourself, then that requires you to step up, requires you to speak up. And then once you've learned how to do those things, stay up, keep doing it, right? Like take a deep breath and keep doing it.
Do
So
people?
that's our latest tagline is that step up, speak up, stay up.
I like that. Do people come back to you, after you've gotten them to speak up, and do they have to come back to you in order to help themselves stay up? Is that something? Do you have repeat customers to be like, hey, it's been a year, and thanks a lot, you got me going, but I feel like I'm starting to wilt. What can we do to? Is that? Do you have a lot of that?
We do have a lot of that because humans are not static, right? We're dynamic. So we learn skills, we adapt, we develop strength, and then we need a tune-up, and we kind of take ourselves to that next place, and then we need to develop some more. So we definitely have people that come back to us for sort of refresher on some core skills, and then they'll come back to us for things that they're bumping up against. They're saying, okay, so I got to be really good at this one dimension of leadership, and now I'm facing this other challenge. I get that I need to develop myself more to take my company to the next level, or to take my career to the next level. So that happens a lot. Yeah.
How do you keep up? What's your dynamic? How do you keep that where you are, that level? I mean, do you have somebody helping you out, or is it just you and
Always,
your partner?
always, yeah. So I mean, we work with business coaches. We work with a variety of people. So we're always trying to do our own developmental work. I mean, it's an integrity thing,
Mm,
right? I mean, you go to workshops to learn more about how to do your craft,
hmm.
right? And so I consider that the same thing. That for those of us that are in these kind of positions where our job is to help develop others, then my job is to develop myself. Otherwise, I'm way out of integrity.
Do
So
do you have conversations with other? What's your title? What would you call yourself? Somebody say, hey, what do you do?
technically, my title is founding partner because I'm one of the partners in the company that was started.
But,
Technically, that's my
yeah,
title.
but what's your you don't get it. Like, what's your job? Like, what do you in a few words? Like, if somebody says, what do you do? And you only have like 6 words, right?
6 words. Ooh, that's a great question. Guide, coach, levity creator, salesperson. These are more than 6 words, but I'm making them compound words.
That's good.
Troublemaker.
And now, how does
uh,
how does troublemaker fit in? Yeah. Well, it's good. It adds levity, right? I think that goes with the levity part.
That's with the levity.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like, I'm usually like so. I mean, I consider all of those part of my life. So I mean, I guess Ellen and I are co-CEOs. I would say we're both in charge of making things happen, but we're very lucky because we have a great partnership. So I do a lot of our curriculum development. So I write a lot of our content, which is great because I get to really dig into what people need, and I get to create something for them that helps them to fulfill that need.
Do you like network, and do you have meetings with people that do well, that do what you do, and are there other people that do what you do the way you do
Yeah,
it? Yeah,
yes to both of those things. There's
yeah.
a worldwide organization called the Applied Improvisation Network, and it's a global organization. People that all around the world that do the work that we do, the kind of work where we do take improv and apply it to a lot of other purposes. And there are people around the globe that do. We talk with each other all the time. There's a really active community. We normally have a big conference every year. It's been canceled this year. But applied improvisers are some of the most generous people I've ever met in my life. They share their work freely. They riff ideas on each other all the time. They share content. They teach each other. The generosity is breathtaking, which is kind of the opposite of what you see in a lot of spheres. Right? There's a
Mm.
lot of it's mine and I have to hold on to it, and oh, you're my competition, so I can't talk with you and do whatever with you, and I can't share this trade secret. That's so the opposite of what it's like in our world, because applied improvisers, by their nature, they're living by the core principles of improv, which are it's my job to take care of you and make you look great on stage. We're improvising together on stage. So therefore it's my job to do that in other places too.
Do you find
So
does that come up in the people you help? Does that come up like, well, these are I can't, for instance, even inside a company you're working with, right? Do they, oh, they can't, my employees or coworkers or what have you can't know how I do this, because if they know how I make this happen, well, then I'm gonna lose status, or they're gonna get ahead of me, or they're gonna be right. So that happens obviously from company to company. Do you see that happening within businesses that you work with? That same sort of dynamic?
oh yes, very much so. There's actually a client of ours that is a large retail chain. They sell electrical parts to the construction industry, and even store to store to store, they were treating each other as competition. That was the model that they had had for 40 years. And through our work with them, we helped them to discover, oh, wait a minute, maybe, just maybe, if we work together more and help each other out, that we could all make more money together, serve our clients better, and not be treating each other like competition, but instead treating each other like collaborators and co-conspire to create something better for everybody. So it's been really exciting to watch them start to change their dynamic within their company, because they're learning how to work together. And I mean, sometimes inside companies that does bring up actual change of things like business models. So I mean, if I look at that, for example, store to store, if they're treating each other as competition and their sales structure is such that they benefit by pilfering each other's clients, then that's a flawed sales structure. Mm-hmm. That should change, which is one of the things they've done. To their credit, they said, maybe this is not a good model anymore. So it's been good because they realized, here's what's wrong with our commission structure. Here's what's wrong, because there are structures and systems that set people up to behave that way. To behave, if the commission structure creates a forcing function where people are going to go after each other's clients, then that's a problem inside the structure. Fix that, right? Sometimes when we're working with people, we identify places where the problem is a process or a structure as opposed to the people, and where are the two intersecting that they need to be separated out, and the process needs to be fixed or the structure needs to be adjusted. Because then sometimes if you change the structure or the process, it opens up more room for the people to respond differently to each other, right? Because if you and I are fishing for the same fish, we may or may not be in cooperation in doing that. But if you set it up so that we both win by going after that one fish, then we're going to figure out how to work together. We're going to try and do our best to take care of each other in that process. And
I think you need to do that without losing the competitive spirit, right? I think people still need to be competitive with each other, because that's for some people that's a huge motivational thing. It's like you want to, it keeps you going. That's a huge boost to whatever it is you're doing. But at the same time, you want to work with that person, because ultimately, it's going to help you, I think, if you work with somebody as opposed to not working with somebody, and and applaud each other and their successes. I just think that's.
Oh, definitely.
I just think it helps. It helps everybody.
Right. So there's healthy, it's. I love what you just said, because there's competition, and then there's also conflict, and either of those things can be unproductive and destructive, or it can be productive, right? So we don't need to avoid competition. We don't need to avoid conflict. But what if we can do them productively? What if we can do them in a way that brings everybody forward, right? I mean, and that's so competition absolutely can be super healthy, right? Like if I look at another player in the market right in our Hartford community here, if I look at CT Improv, which is a wonderful group of folks, they're theater right downtown Hartford. I have played theatrical improv at that theater for a long time, and if I look at them as, they're my competition, we need to, tear each other down, that doesn't help them, that doesn't help me. But if I look at what they do and I say, wow, here's what they do really well, and I also open up the conversation about they're really not my competition because they don't do the same thing that I do, right? So sometimes looking at our competition really means recognizing you don't do what we do, we don't do what you do. We're not going to bring a comedy team inside someone's corporation and do the laugh 'em ups at a company event. That's not what we do. But they're also not going to come in and do emotional intelligence training, right? So we both belong in the marketplace and can be of service to everybody if we treat each other as healthy competition in a way that elevates everyone, which is completely different than, oh my gosh, I need to be keeping it all for myself and being grubby. There's plenty of business. There's no shortage of people. We live in a country with 325 million people in it. There's no shortage of business.
Yeah.
Plenty for everybody.
Yeah, there's plenty for everybody. And in my line of work in video, that's true too. It's like, there's a lot of, there is a ton of video people out there, whether it be individuals or full-blown companies or what have you. But they're all a little bit different. Now, one of it is like, well, they produce things differently. They look at things a little bit differently. But maybe also their niche is different. Maybe some person is a little bit more of a storyteller, but this person is more of a, more visual and excitement. Or maybe, this guy's very marketing. This guy's maybe not so much. So I think, but we can all work together, and we're all kind of competition. But again, yeah, I don't think there's any reason to hold everything you have so close because, in our world, we work a lot together, we work with each other, we loan equipment back and forth to each other. So in that regard, my industry is great. I mean, I've really never had a problem where I call somebody up and they're not willing to share. We're always willing to share about how'd you set that shot up? That's really cool. Oh, I did with the thing and the other stuff. And, oh, that's neat. I'll have to try it, right? So I work with a lot of folks, right out of school and older, and some are crazy talented, but just not quite there yet, right? But you can see it. So I love sharing what I've learned over these, believe it or not, 28 years I've been doing this nonsense, But because it's really fun to sort of pass that on and them like, right, and it's something, and watch them sort of grow. I had a guy I used for a long time as like a grip audio kind of production assistant type of guy, and he's really good, very talented, younger, very early 20s, and I called him up. I says, "Hey, I got a job." He says, "What's the job?" I said, "Grip." He says, "Yeah, I'm not doing that anymore, but I'll be a camera op for you." I was like, "Okay, that's cool." So, some time went on, and I'm going to give him a call, and ever since I've been using him as a second camera when I needed jobs, or as I've referred him to other folks as well. So, because he's that talented, and he's like, he's one of those things. He spoke up, right? Going back, he spoke up. He's like, I don't,
Yes.
I don't, and he was just very good about it. He says, "I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. I want to do camera work. That's what I want to do." I was like, "Cool. Like, that's awesome. I'm really happy you spoke up." And he's been great. I just worked with him the other day. He's terrific. So it's been really, really good because he's got some great ideas, and we collaborate. I'm the boss, but we collaborate, and I listen to him.
Yeah.
And it works. And he sees things a little bit differently than I do, but but that's everybody sees differently than the other person. That's why it's so
That's
great to
part of
collaborate.
the Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
So
Like you're gonna resonate with somebody in a different way than he will. And in the face of a shared client, the client and you and he all get to be the beneficiary of that.
especially the client, and the client always comes back and says, "You guys were great. I like how you collaborate. I like how you worked. Very professional. Blah blah blah," which is awesome. I love that kind of feedback, and I put that on my crew as just being willing and excited to be there and do the best job that they can, because that's what it comes down to. So. Listen, I'm going to wrap this up. This has been a ton of fun, but before I do, I want you to give us some of your details about people really stoked about hearing what you had to say today, and they want to give you a call or email you. How do they get a hold of you, Jenny?
Yes. So our URL is thebouldercompany.com. There's no U, so it's the and then BOLDER company.com. That's our URL. So you can come and visit us there. They can also email me directly at Jenny at the Boulder Company, JENNY at thebouldercompany.com. And they can find us on Facebook. And also, same tag, Boulder Company, LinkedIn, Boulder Company, or I think we're on Twitter. My business partner handles our Twitter.
You doing TikTok?
So,
You on TikTok?
no, I don't even know what that is.
Oh, you don't know TikTok? Oh, you gotta look up.
No.
You gotta go on your phone, look up
Oh, now I
TikTok.
gotta go find
Yeah. So it's K's. So TIKTOK. Ridiculous.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's that?
Ridiculous. Yeah. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Okay. All right.
Ridiculous.
We're also on Instagram. So
Cool.
there's our Instagram account too. So people can find us in all of those ways. Or they
Awesome.
can just call us too. Our numbers on our website, 899-1772, 860-899-1772. Yeah. Let's stop and think about that for a minute.
Yeah.
We don't know our phone numbers.
No, we don't know our phone numbers. No, not anymore. Used to. I remember I called my friends when I was a kid with the rotary, right? And I would know all the numbers, and I'd have to wait. I had a friend come over, and he looks at my phone, and he says, "What? How do you?" Because he was just used to the push button. He had no idea about the rotary, so I had to teach him how to use the rotary phone. Hysterical. Yeah, but Jenny,
One other
yeah,
note
please.
is, we're going to be rolling out some really cool virtual programming over the next several weeks while everybody's stuck at home. We're going to be offering some advanced emotional intelligence skill building to help everybody learn, because the next skill set that everybody needs is they need to learn how to manage all these feelings. They also need to learn how to reinvent what's going on. So we're going to be doing a lot of work on change management and what are the skills of adapting. So we're going to hone in on what are the skills of adapting.
Huge. Yeah,
You know,
huge.
how do we move through the discomfort of risk? How do we move through the discomfort of potential failure when we're trying something new that we've never tried before? So we're going to be doing a lot of work, virtual work focused on those skills. So they come on down to the bouldercompany.com and we'll have the virtual posting or
That's cool, people. Don't be afraid to step forward. And if you are feeling afraid, just step back. Oh, just step back again, and just kind of gather your thoughts and really think about why you're feeling those things, and be present and just move forward. You know, this is a time where we all have to just move forward every day, and there's going to be still some changes coming up for sure. I mean, we're not out of it yet. But I am super optimistic that we're going to get through this and we're going to be good coming out the other side. But yeah, let's talk to each other. Let's work with each other. Let's be confident, and it's okay to be scared, but you know, let's work with that and figure out why we're scared and be here for one another. So Jenny, thank you very much. Thanks for those resources. Yeah, folks, go please check out Jenny's website, and she'll be happy to talk to you, I'm sure, if you give her a ring. And we'll just go from there. So again, Jenny, thank you very, very much. This has been a huge, very cool conversation.
yes.
So I can't wait till we put it up there on the old YouTube and people can listen and hear and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so we're on YouTube and Spotify and Apple iPod and all those other cool platforms. So check it out.
Yay.
Jenny, thanks a lot. We're all set.
Thanks so much.
We'll see you.